Warning, there will be spoilers for the Acolyte Season 1. Heavy spoilers. And as another warning, this isn't a hate video for the Acolyte. I usually give my opinion one time, then move on from it. And I already did that, so I'm moving on from my opinion. Still here? Alright, let's get to it. Now that the Acolyte Season 1 has finished, and I've given my opinion on it in my last video, I'd like to step away from my own thoughts and feelings about it and move on to the actual story, how it fits into the entirety of Star Wars, and some themes of the show that make the Acolyte stand out from other Star Wars projects. I do feel my initial reaction of the first season of the Acolyte may have been a bit harsh. I went into this show with a huge amount of optimism. Finally, we were getting out of the Skywalker saga and legacy and moving on to other timelines. But I really don't want to talk about all that. There are some pretty good ideas put forth in the Acolyte, and I have to commend them for that. Some of those ideas, and I'll get more into depth in those in just a bit, are the writers of the Acolyte weren't afraid to take chances, to tell a story that would eventually lead us to the deaths of many key characters, how they used real-world ideas that they knew would make a lot of people angry. They pushed the boundaries about what we believed to be true about the Jedi and how that led to ultimate destruction of the Jedi way of life. Sure, some may say that takes away a bit of how Palpatine manipulated an entire galaxy and used Anakin Skywalker to help bring down the Jedi Order, but it seems the Acolyte was trying to enhance that, how it began, how the ball started rolling, so to speak. Because we all know the collapse of a civilization or entity within it doesn't happen overnight. Then there's the idea of the duality of man, the yin and yang that each of us carry within us, and how, if we were given a certain power such as the Force, it would change us. At least it would change any normal person. Oh yeah, I forgot. If you're a Star Wars fan like me, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Slap it like you're in the Roman Empire. Let's see if we can get this channel up to 40,000 subscribers. Yeah, the YouTube algorithm likes it when I say all this. But I really do want to grow this channel. I lost my way for a bit, but now I'm back and more focused than ever. Yeah, alright, let's get on with it. Every writer throughout history has put a little part of themselves into their works. Some bit of their personality is contained within their stories. To stay relevant to the topic, I give you George Lucas, Luke Skywalker, Lucas, Luke. Not a coincidence. So it's no surprise that the writers of The Acolyte would put a bit of themselves into this show as well. Maybe the fandom wasn't ready for that, but we have to admit it was bold. It was a huge chance they took, and I can't fault them for that. So I can't hate on them for pushing the envelope, no matter the repercussions that come from it. I just wanted to get that out there. I won't talk any more about this. Let's move on to the characters, whether we felt connected or disconnected to some of the characters within, such as Sol, Indara, Tobin, Jeki, Yord, Kelnaka, or any of the nameless Jedi sprinkled throughout. It was a daring move to kill them off. Now, the only character we were meant to really be attached to was Jeki, and it worked, and I think that might have been by accident. Her death hit harder than any of the others, but her death was meant to show the heaviness of what we were experiencing. Her death alone. The others were throwaways, okay? Maybe not throwaways, but characters that would lead us into the next chapter. And there will likely be another series to explore this. We weren't meant to become attached to the other characters, like Sol and Tobin. Hence the reason there was no real character development nor in-depth explanation as to their motivations. Introduction characters meant to be sacrificed in order to move the Acolyte forward. To put it bluntly, why Osha has become an acolyte of the dark side, and she is the main character of the show along with May. In the prequels, the Jedi arrogance and corruption was an undertone. Yes, it was shown, but they were still made out to be the good guys, the helpless victims of Palpatine's, aka Darth Sidious's, plan. But in the Acolyte, it comes right out and says it. Some of the Jedi are corrupt, They allowed emotion to surface, hid their actions when they weren't in line with the Jedi code or doctrine, and even justified bad actions to make their shortcomings seem noble. But it didn't make all Jedi out to be that way, only the small group we've seen in the Acolyte. They regretted their actions to some degree, but they were steadfast in their convictions that they were doing the right thing. Sol and Tobin both reiterate it, no matter how wrong that or right that was. Then we have Vernestra blatantly lying to the Council, May, and now Yoda, showing that these characters know their actions would not be seen as good. That's huge. To say elements within the Jedi Order that operated outside of the Jedi Code. And it shows how the eventual collapse of the Jedi was coming for a while before the prequels. Remember when I said civilizations or entities within those civilizations don't collapse overnight? Well, this shows how that really began coming to the forefront, and a lot of the High Republic novels even begin that spark. This was just the tipping point. Now, that doesn't mean the entire Jedi Order is portrayed in that way. In fact, Vernestra lying establishes it as a truth that every Jedi is not on the same page as the rogues, especially the Jedi High Council. Why lie about what Sol and the others did if everyone is on board with being corrupt? Doesn't make any sense. It also explains how Ki-Adi-Mundi doesn't know the Sith have returned much earlier than the Star Wars prequels. Kind of like dirty cops and good cops. There are both. But it doesn't mean being a dirty cop is the rule. They are the exception. And this idea that the Jedi are becoming weaker with their own beliefs only highlights the fact that Palpatine took his chance and destroyed them. If the Jedi were at their strongest during Sidious's time, then why didn't any Sith before Palpatine succeed? Some tried and failed, then went into hiding because the Jedi were too strong. Then we have the characters of May and Osha. Early on, I told people off the internet, I didn't say anything there because I try to ignore that, but early on, I told people that these two were likely one person split into two physical bodies. I was more just saying it as a what if than any hard truth. But this is one idea that the Acolyte has really stepped up on the whole boundary pushing thingy. And it really intensifies what you think of the duality of man, meaning there are two parts to every being, that we aren't all good and we aren't all bad as individuals, even in our own world. Okay, yes, some people are all bad. My family experienced that 2 weeks ago, but enough about that. Back to the Acolyte. We see the duality of man first appear within Luke Skywalker, the times he slipped into the dark side only to come back. Then we see it again in Anakin Skywalker and his alter ego, Darth Vader. But this duality has always been contained in one physical body, creating a turmoil within. Am I bad or am I good? The truth is neither and both, for both characters. However, the writers of The Acolyte took it one step further and took one person and made them two, creating a yin and yang between them. If one is good, then the other is bad. If one character shifts, then the other shifts opposite. Neither will ever be able to be on the same page at the same time. May tried to break that cycle when she decided she was going to turn herself into the Jedi. However, when she ran into Osha, it was apparent that Osha wasn't ready to shift to the dark side, and the yang within May wouldn't allow her to switch sides. We see this when they were children as well. They loved each other, but they were two sides of the same coin. Much like how I describe Ahsoka Tano and Maul, two sides of the same coin, a duality within two separate beings. This is why we see May shift easily, then shift back easily. She's the polar opposite of Osha, and if you've played with magnets any time in your life, you know that two positive sides of a magnet just push away from each other. That's the same with May and Osha. Then you have the theme of family. This is something Star Wars has done throughout its existence. The Acolyte is no different. May, Osha, and their mothers are a family, and that familial unit is what drives the two characters. Why did you kill our mother in front of me? Why were you trying to take away my sister and break up our family? These are strong motivations for any one of us even, and they have been strong motivations throughout Star Wars, a sense of belonging to a family, even if not blood related, such as Han belonging to the Skywalker family and eventually marrying one of them. Anakin just wanting to live his life with his wife and unborn child, later to be revealed as twins. Jyn Erso looking for something to belong to. She thought she found it with Saw Gerrera until she felt betrayed by him. Then later grouping with Cassian Andor and the others to form a bond. I can go on and on about familial units within Star Wars, but I think I've said enough about that. Okay, so the last thing is the cameo of Darth Plagueis the Wise. It's assumed that he is the master behind the stranger known as Khmer, and I can get why people assume that. But there's more to it than just that, and it will lead us to Palpatine and the prequels eventually. While the rule of two is a thing, it's more of a guideline than an actual rule. It's true there are rarely more than two, but Palpatine had Darth Maul as his apprentice the same time he had his own master in Plagueis. Maul even tried to teach his brother Savage Opress into a Sith, while Palpatine and Dooku were the true Sith lords. But going back to Plagueis' appearance in The Acolyte, we all know he was learning the secret to eternal life and even creating life. It was the whole thing that really hooked Anakin on Palpatine before his actual turn. So in The Acolyte, he senses that Osha and May aren't of natural creation, just as Soul did. And yes, he would have been stalking Khmer long enough to have seen him training May, not as the master, but as someone who sensed divergence in the Force, just as Soul did. And now he wants to know the secret of how they were created. If he can learn that technique, becoming immortal would become Plagueis' final step, other than sending Palpatine to be a senator, and we all know how that worked out for Sidious and Plagueis. But when we look at The Acolyte and these themes, it begins to make a lot more sense. Whether or not it was executed correctly is something to be seen. I mean, usually the first season of a show isn't as good as follow-up seasons. Season 2 of The Mandalorian was definitely better than Season 1 in my opinion, although I do like both a lot. I think the Book of Boba Fett would benefit greatly from a second season as well. That's pretty much all I have right now for The Acolyte. I'm sure I will make more videos talking about The Acolyte in the future, and it isn't about praising the show nor hating on it. It's there. We might as well talk about it. So leave a comment below and let me know what you think about these ideas. I know a lot of you don't like the show, and I know a lot of you do like The Acolyte, but this isn't about that. And before you go, don't forget to slap the subscribe button as if you think about the Roman Empire every day. Until the next time, this is Gerald, a Star Wars fanatic, signing off. Wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. Thank you all for watching, and remember, this is the way.